morning everyone, what's going on? It is Adam from Green Auto Services and welcome back to another video. Today we have a 2013 Ford Fiesta. That's in for a couple of issues. The first issue is that there is play in a suspension ball joint which is causing a bit of a knock, but more importantly it's actually due for its first cam belt change. Now these are incredibly important. Inside the engines there are mechanical components that occupy the same space just at different times, and the cam belt is designed to keep those components away from each other as they go into the same spaces. So I hope that makes sense. So it's very important because if it snaps you are looking at catastrophic engine damage and you're going to be looking at a new engine, pretty much. So on that note, we're going to get straight into it. I'll show you a little bit on the lower arm ball joint, but this main video is going to be concentrating on the actual cam belt replacement itself. So if you learn a little something or enjoying the video, please don't hesitate to hit the like and subscribe button. So on that note, let's get straight into it. Okay, so here we are at the near side front, so the passenger front side of the vehicle. Now I've already got the car up in the air, the wheel off as you can see. I've also gone ahead and removed the under tray that protects the bottom of the engine. So this is the lower suspension arm here. So this is the ball joint that connects to the bottom of the hub. You then have it mounted to the subframe with one and two bolts up there. That's the actual bolt there that goes through the subframe, and that's literally it. It's just 3 connecting points. Now the reason why we're replacing this, the bushes at the back here are susceptible to wearing, but they're fine, but our issue is with this ball joint here. So I'm just going to get the camera back on the tripod and show you exactly why we're changing this out. Okay, so this is a close-up of the actual ball joint, and when I get the whole arm out, I'll show you exactly what we're dealing with. But the reason why we're replacing is because there is slight vertical movement in the ball joint, which means the ball joint is internally wearing and allowing play. And this is the knocking that you can normally hear down the road. So if I just grab the lower arm, hopefully you can see it. And you can probably hear it knocking as well. So this is actually a good way, particularly on these Ford Fiestas, to test these lower arm ball joints. Because you've actually got natural resistance from the inner bushes trying to push the arm upwards, the best thing to do is to come underneath the vehicle, grab it and pull it downwards. And if there's any play, that is going to be the source of knocking. Sometimes you can get the road wheel and shake it left to right, but sometimes you won't actually feel the play because it's not a side-to-side movement, it's an up and down movement. So that is one way of checking if the ball joint has play, particularly on these Ford Fiestas. Okay, here we go everyone. So I've actually gone ahead and removed the lower arm from out of the vehicle. So the first thing I did was just remove this pinch bolt from out the bottom of the hub. This is just a 15mm nut and a 13mm bolt. The nut comes straight off, and then you want to just try and twist the actual bolt just to loosen it out because it does get super corroded in there. And then once that's spinning freely, you then just want to get a small tiny hammer and just very gently tap it through, and then you might need a small punch just to push it through the rest of the way. And then once that's out, it's always a good idea to use some sort of chisel just to get in between the bottom of the hub here, just to open it up a little bit to allow the actual ball joint to drop out. And then from there onwards, it is just one 15mm bolt, which just threads and screws straight into the subframe, so there's no nut to hold on to. And the other one is just through there, another 15mm bolt, which goes straight through the lower arm. I don't know if you can quite see that there, then through to a thread, which is also threaded on the side of the subframe. This is probably the most trickiest one to do. Make sure you get it lubed up with any WD-40 or anything like that, because it just helps it come out. You may need to get a big lever bar, like I've got over here. It just allows you to get the leverage over the top of the arm, rest it under the arm of the ramp or the chassis, so you can actually just pull it downwards and it'll come straight out. Will require a bit of force, but it will come out eventually. And here is the lower arm itself. So that is the culprit that we're changing out. You can actually press these ball joints out if you're looking to save yourself some money, but only if you've got a good enough press, and only if you haven't got an extra maybe £5 or £10 just to get the rest of the arm. If it's all got to come out anyway to press that out, you might as well just get the lower arm. This is obviously the new lower arm here. It comes with a plastic protective boot just to protect the rubber boot on the new arm as you put it in. I recommend to keep that on for as long as possible until you're ready to put this back into the hub, which will be the last point. And there we are. It's as easy as that. Sorry I couldn't show you me physically actually removing it, but remember this video is more about the cam belt. This was just a little bonus video whilst the car is in here, because these are actually super common faults. Okay, so here we are with the new arm in but not secure. Now there's a reason why it's not secure. So with these particular arms, the best thing to do is you want to get the back part of the arm in first. Get that lined up as best you can. It is fiddly, and then get the bolt through and then try and get it started by hand. Do it by hand, don't try and gun it up. If you cross thread the threads on the top of the subframe, you're going to have a really bad day. And then once that's in and you've got the bolt in to hold it, you then want to go ahead and get this front bush lined up and then put the bolt in. And again, this is only done up not to the point where it's tight, it's all completely loose, and there is a reason for it. And this is where we are with the ball joint, which still, as you can see, has the plastic cover on there. You will find it's going to knock and bump about around the hub when you're trying to fit it. It's pretty awkward, and you do not want to damage the rubber boot that protects the ball joint, because that is actually an MOT failure if that is damaged or split to a point where it's open and it no longer prevents the ingress of moisture or dirt. Anyway, it's never a good idea to damage new things, so make sure that stays on there till the last point, which this is now the last point. Okay, so let's now get this ball joint dropped into the hub. Just before we do so, this is the part on the top of the ball joint which needs to locate straight up into the hub itself. Alrighty, just one more little quick note. On the old lower arm ball joint, let's just get you focused there. Maybe not. There we go. Right, so if you actually have a close look at where the top part of the ball joint sits into the bottom of the hub, you can actually see there is almost like a groove cut out all around it. This is particularly important. When this is up in the actual bottom of the hub, remember the pinch bolt that we took out? It's designed to go in horizontally compared to the actual top of the ball joint, and the groove actually allows the bolt to perfectly sit in the hub and locate so that it locks it in place. Hope that makes sense. So it doesn't allow the actual ball joint to come out once it's pinched to the bottom of the hub. So make sure you can't get it in the wrong orientation. It sits at one point. When you're just hitting, like you saw just now, with a hammer to get that up into the bottom of the hub, just make sure that this cutout here matches or lines up with the inside of the hub, so that when you put your bolt through the hub, it locates and locks in to the top of the ball joint. Hope that makes sense. And then when you tighten up the bolt, that'll clamp everything round and then hold it. Okay, we are nearly done. So I've gone ahead and put the pinch bolt back in just loosely through the bottom of the hub to hold that all in place. So remember I said the bolts at the front and the back, they are loose. Now there's a reason for it. If you imagine the lower, well, at the moment, the lower arm is just naturally sat right down, and the bushes, which are not designed to move, are in a certain location. But if you remember, we've actually got the vehicle lifted in the air. All the suspension is unweighted. So you have to imagine that when this car is on the floor, if we've locked off these bushes, and then we drop everything down onto the floor, the lower arm is going to naturally sit upwards, and because we've already locked off this bush, it's actually going to put unnecessary tension on the front bush. Not necessarily the rear one, because it doesn't, the rear one is orientated in a different way, so it doesn't matter which position that is. But what we have to do here is basically get the suspension up to the point where it would be naturally sat, and then tighten it off. So you can do one of two things. I've actually got access to a hydraulic transmission stand, so I'm just going to lift the suspension up until it gets to its natural point and then lock everything off. The other thing you could probably do, if you've got both a jack and an axle stand, you can jack the vehicle up, put an axle stand underneath the ball joint, and then slowly lower it down to the point where you feel that the lower arm is sat in a more natural position when the car is on the deck. Hope that makes sense, so let's do that now. And you don't actually need to lock off the pinch bolt, because again, it doesn't matter about its orientation. It's locked in a way where the ball joint will take up all the movement regardless of where the vehicle is. Okay, so now that everything was locked off just before I lowered it, if you imagine now, this bush is under unnecessary tension. But that's absolutely fine, because it won't be in an unnatural tension when the suspension is then in its normal position once the car is on the deck. Because let's face it, the car is going to spend its entire life sat on the floor. And there we are. So all we need to do now is just tighten up that pinch bolt, and we're all done. Okay, there we are, you lucky devils. You actually got a little bit more than I anticipated to actually film today on the near side front lower arm specifically. So if I make this into a separate video, thanks for watching. If you've liked it, learned a little something, please don't hesitate to drop a like, and more importantly, hit that subscribe button. Thank you for your support in advance. It's going amazingly at the moment. You guys are awesome. So if we end there, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video. However, if I don't decide to make it a separate video, we are now going to continue on and do the cam belt on this 1.5 TDI diesel engine, which I believe is actually a Peugeot engine. It's a slightly different setup. It is not the EcoBoost or the 1.6 Z-Tech engines that you would get in these normal Fords. So on that note, let's get back straight into it.